Onion Cycles podcast is about thought provoking, emotion evoking, action driven, step by step guidance to explore the unique, glorious, and wonderful ocean of your being. Because healing is a multi layered process of getting to know oneself. Become the self empowered empiric researcher by discovering the unique layers of your existence. With your host, Nadine Alma, welcome to the Holistic Healing Hub. Welcome to the Onion Cycles podcast. Hello and welcome, my beloved fellow healing onions. I am so happy you decided again this week to spend some of your time, some of your energy in this beautiful space that we open up each week to become aware of ourselves, to become conscious about our needs, about our belief systems, our identity, the truth about who we are and who we want to be, about bridging that gap, and about knowing what resources to use to build said bridge. It is a place of vulnerability. It is a place where we are very honest with ourselves. And it is also a place where it's all about not just food for thought. It's not just about feeling something. It's also about rolling up our sleeves and doing the noble work. You're brave. You're wonderful and strong, and I really appreciate you doing this noble work because it is not easy. And I find myself often amazed how people have this possibility of self growth and putting in work to actually become the person they want to be rather than restrict themselves to what they thought is set in stone. Now, to everyone new out there, hello as well. I welcome you wholeheartedly to the Holistic Healing Hub. I wanted to point out that every episode comes along with a worksheet that contains all the notes of what we discussed in the episodes. And as I said, a main motto of the podcast is as I think, so I feel, so I act. So in order to make these episodes more personal, individual, and let them become a chance for you to actually experience yourself through the week with that same topic we discussed, there are exercises on each worksheet that make this an opportunity to reflect more deeply and on a more personal, individual level. With that said, welcome to Story 39, Episode 40. The past two episodes, beliefs and identity, have been mainly inspired by Tony Robbins' 2022, I think it was called Become Unshakable or something like that. I participated and I felt so inspired. In some ways, it really changed my thinking. It surely educated me on a lot of things. Today's episode, relationships, is also inspired by his work and the 5 days that I spent in a group of, I think, about 30,000 people. Now he says, love is the oxygen of the soul. Oh, so beautiful, isn't it? The quality of your life is reflected in the quality of your relationships. Relationships are there on a daily basis. Even if I like being a hermit, I sometimes go to a supermarket. There is a cashier on the other side scanning the products I buy to nourish myself. And in that instant, that is a relationship too. So we are not alone on this planet. Therefore, we discuss the topic of relationships today. Obviously, it's a very vast one. So we just will touch on the following three main points. The first one is the ability to distinguish between conditional versus unconditional love. The second one is understanding yourself and therefore understanding others better. And we will do that by discussing the four horsemen in a relationship, the SEW method by Julie Cowell, the 3 U's and the 3 C's. And lastly, I wanted to add something on a personal note. regarding dynamics and energetic bonds from a spiritual standpoint. Conditional for us, unconditional love. It is very important to realize, as we have discovered in the last year spent together, that you can control what you do, your choices and your actions and your decisions, right? Therefore, as someone out of relying on others for their emotional, spiritual, and physical growth, we are able to trade our expectations for appreciation. We are able to make the choice that in every interaction we have on a daily basis, we do the best we can with the resources we have. We are interacting with a lot of people every single day, and love is not strictly restricted to just spouses, family, relatives, and friendships. Love is something that is all encompassing, and love is, as he said, the oxygen of the soul. Therefore, every interaction you have, be it with a human being, be it with an animal, be it with whatever you encounter on a daily basis, love is more like a mindset. And if you're feeling drawn to dive deeper into the topic of love, we did a series called the Art of Love series, personally one of my favorites. And this dives deep into what about love has been brushed down, as though it is just there or it isn't, as though it is not something we can actually approach like an art form, like something that we can learn about, like something that we can deepen our knowledge about. And therefore, if you feel it resonates, go back to that series. I love producing that. I learned a lot about it. And realizing that art could be looked at as an art form, therefore, there is something to learn about it, really opens up the possibilities of being able to better distinguish between conditional and unconditional love, because sometimes we don't even realize in what dynamic we have put ourselves or what dynamic we put onto others. On that note, I also wanted to mention negative stacking. It is scientifically proven that we human beings put 7 times stronger connection to something negative than something positive. I think I came across that in my marketing studies, because it said that every client that gives you a negative feedback or puts out there a negative impression and perception of your business has actually an impact that is 7 times stronger than every positive feedback and comment you get. And so we do that same thing to ourselves. Negative stacking means that the brain, that as we have discovered so far as well, always chooses the painful known over the unknown. It could be better. That being said, the brain also distorts, deletes, and generalizes things, meaning that if we experience something, a root cause, if you want, and then we repeat the pattern because we sort of filed that in our brains and rinse and repeat, we went over that. Over time, this becomes a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I'm in a victimhood mindset, I'll always feel more comfortable by saying that someone else is responsible for how I feel or how I acted, rather than taking the responsibility and going back to the root cause of what first drew me to the resolution of feeling like a victim. Now, if you feel drawn to that topic, I would encourage you to check out our episode called The Emotional Body, because there we dive into the topic of how our feelings and emotions actually drive us into repetitive patterns of behavior and thinking. And that, as we know, thinking shapes our reality. So if you resonate with that, feel free to listen to that podcast episode after this one. The negative stacking that influences our perception on love, together with the expectations we put onto others, and if they're unmet, make them responsible for not loving us enough. And finally, realizing that we actually have a choice and the only thing we can control is ourselves and our choices and decisions and actions, then enables us to live from a point of view that love is everywhere to be found, and love is only love if it is unconditional and not tied to any expectations. Let's move on to understanding ourselves and understanding others to a more personal level. Our most frequent relationships, the people we see the most, the spouses we have, the family members we have. The four horsemen, I believe some of you out there might already know them, are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. All of these are responses that come up because we feel triggered. If we criticize someone while in an argument, then all we do is project on others what actually is within us. We ignore the mirror that is shown to us. We ignore the trigger that all it wants to do is tell us something about ourselves. It wants our attention to be drawn to a topic, a feeling that we haven't felt yet. But instead, we sort of project it on others and start pulling it away and criticizing the other person to get that headlight, that attention onto what the other person did wrong. Now, what also plays into there, and all of the four horsemen as an overall understanding, is that there is a trigger and it wants to be felt. No matter if you criticize, contempt, become defensive, or stonewall, all it is there is a trigger and it's a coping mechanism to not look at that trigger. Contempt is then negative and judgmental comments to put the other person down and put yourself above the other person. It is creating an atmosphere of judgment that just really is rooted in unexpressed true feeling. Again, it is a trigger, and again, contempt is nothing other but a coping mechanism to not feel what we deem unworthy of feeling, what we were told is shameful, what we were told is being at fault. The third one, after criticizing and contempt, is defensiveness. So it's rejecting the truth to save ourselves from admitting a fault. Again, we are wired to think that there is shame in failure. We are wired to think that we are bound to have everything figured out. And therefore, when we realize something might have been judged and executed in a wrong way, in a hurtful way even, then we might come to the conclusion that this failure of ourselves, this shame, needs to be thrown back over the argumentative war lines, if you will, to the other person. One way of discovering that we actually could resolve defensiveness as well as contempt and criticism and stonewalling lies in the truth of it all, that there is nothing to be ashamed about. And if we would feel safe enough in our identity and safe enough in our own body and mind and soul, we would be able to admit anything that we judged wrong in a situation that caused another person pain. But then again, defensiveness might also come up when we feel like we have been done wrong by. So there's a righteousness to it too. And that righteousness also comes with an unmet expectation that might lead us back to realizing that we actually put a condition on the love, on the favor we offer to someone else, on the time we've given, on the energy we've given that person. Now, I wanted to add here that it is absolutely fine and okay to take a time out, to breathe, to say, let's come back to that tomorrow, in a few hours, or whatever feels good to you. However, stonewalling, as used in a form of emotional abuse, knowing full well that the other person is crumbling with the unknown that you present them with the silence treatment, or with whatever your art of stonewalling looks like, that is where it becomes a problem, because then we use it against the other person and then we are not exercising unconditional love. We are trying to again cope with something by putting it away from us and onto the other person. Therefore, the four horsemen, criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling, are actually hurtful to every beautiful relationship we have in our lives. And therefore, the only way out of those coping mechanisms with triggers is first observing them, then acknowledging them, and then observing them some more, acknowledging them some more, feeling what comes up with every single opportunity you get. One way to do that is to use the SEW method by Julie Cowell. SEW, Sue, sensation, emotion, and want. What it means is that instead of repeating a pattern of an action triggered by a coping mechanism, you could instead go back to you and state very clearly to the other person where in the body you feel the sensation you're feeling, what emotion you're actually feeling, and what the want or the need is in order for you to be able to resolve this in a healthy, neutral, positive way and come back to a point where it comes from pure heart and unconditional love. Let me give you an example. So, if I was to be contempt during a situation, I would probably say something, and I have said something like that. What on earth is wrong with you? You're driving like a maniac, right? What I could have actually said was, I feel really like my heart is thumping 1,000 miles per hour. That is because I feel very scared. And would we please be able to maybe drive a little bit slower so I can feel safe again? Because I really feel unsafe now. Right. That opens up a space for the other person to not feel criticized, to not feel like I'm putting them down in contempt. That opens even up a space for them to be vulnerable with me and say, oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. Like, I just had this experience, this situation, this person, and it made me angry because of this. It opens up a learning opportunity. It even opens up a possibility for the relationship to deepen, for the bond to get stronger. Because what we create here is we open up about our inner world, so the other person has an opportunity to open up about their inner world. Another example, instead of saying, why are you still bothered by this? We spoke about this over and over again. We closed that chapter. My goodness, go talk to your therapist about it. Well, if we'd love that person, we'd want to understand that person, even if it triggers us, even if it makes us feel inadequate because we thought it was resolved, we thought it was over with. But if it's over for us, then that's good. But the other person just told us it's not over for them. And if we love them unconditionally, we might say something like, right, that really makes my chest tight. And I feel a lot of resentment right now within me. I love you very much though, and I would like to have half an hour to calm my nerves and steady my breathing and be fully back on the terms of unconditional love, that I am the person who can be there for you and who is able to process what are you saying through active listening. So let us come back to this topic in an hour. Again, it opens up a space to be able to talk about it, to be able to reveal that we're just human and we acknowledge that the other person is just human, and let us come back to this and fuel what makes us human, fuel the love within us, the exchange of love without conditions. In order to be able to do that, we need to state where we feel, what emotion we feel, and what it is that we need in order to be able to go back to that state. a lot of what I talked about has to do with triggers. And I feel like triggers are basically the essential ingredient in being able to understand us, because if everything works out brilliantly and well, then there is no real breeding ground for growing. Whereas if we are triggered, there is a lot of breeding ground for growth, because these triggers show us where it hurts, and if something hurts, if something makes us scared, then this is exactly where we are able to pinpoint emotional possibilities of healing. I want to mention briefly as well the three U's and the three C's, because the three U's are the breeding ground that then lead to coping mechanisms. The three U's lead to the three C's, and the three C's in my mind are closely related to Four Horsemen. The three U's are if you feel unseen, if you feel not understood, or if you feel unsafe. So if you feel unseen, that might lead you to criticizing. If you feel unseen, you might criticize, but you also feel criticized. So then if you feel not understood, you close yourself or you close the argument. And if you feel unsafe, you either control or you feel controlled and then go back to a coping mechanism. The three U's, unseen, not understood, and unsafe, lead to the three C's: criticized, criticizing, closing up, controlling, or feel controlled, that then lead to the Four Horsemen, which are basically criticizing, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. As long as we keep in the back of our mind during an argument, whenever a trigger comes up, how we react and not judge it, just observe it. And from there, become more aware of how we respond. We at some point will be able to determine where in the body we feel what emotion and what it is that we need to resolve this state of mind to come back to one of neutrality. Obviously, I talked in the beginning about the noble work. Well, now you know why it is noble, because it is so hard and it requires consistency. It requires a lot of self-love as well, and it requires to not lose the sight of the overall objective of what we're trying to do, which is understanding ourselves, to better our relationships, to deepen our bonds with the people around us, to open up a space where we become the lighthouse and show other people that it really ends with us. We can decide on how we interact with what is presented to us in the outer world, and how actually everything that happens in the outer world is an opportunity for us to grow. On a different note, and that being a personal note, we come to the third and last topic of this podcast episode. I call it dynamics and energetic bonds. Now, I come to this point providing that we are on the same basis, so I will tell you my personal point of view on this. So, we choose this life, therefore, we choose our family, we choose other relationships, and we choose every single interaction we had in that life. See, we discussed in the episode Regeneration about the variety of people we interact with on a daily basis in the section of social regeneration, right? The amount of people that we interact with on a daily basis is enormous. And because of this, my second point of view I wanted to make from my perspective is that it is highly personal, and it's highly up to each and every one of us individually to make the right decisions for ourselves. Like I said earlier, people make decisions based on the resources they have. People make decisions and act with the resources they have available to them. Now, from the point of view that we choose this life, that also means that it is a highly personal way of making your choices. So therefore, nothing that I say here is a recipe that will fit everyone out there. I haven't figured out anything else but my own experience. What I do, though, know is that as long as you keep your curiosity piqued And as long as you know that growth comes from what is presented to us in our life's experiences, then you are on a way to empower yourself. You are here to become a self-empiric researcher, to get to know yourself in order to integrate, heal, right? From a spiritual point of view, the dynamics and energetic bonds of our relationships do really reflect the quality of our life. Therefore, making choices for ourselves that enforce unconditional love, that enforce observing ourselves and resolving what triggers come up, resolving the coping mechanisms with which we try to suppress the triggers. That is where we can refine the relationships presented in our lives. Because relationships, in essence, of all kinds, serve the growth of our soul. They tell us something about ourselves. They mirror something that is within us. Whether you admire someone and forget that what you actually admire in the other person is also reflected within you, or whether you get triggered by someone and realize that what has been triggered, the emotion that has been triggered, has at some point being suppressed by yourself because of something. Your job is to find out why, and your job is it because there's beauty in it, there's grace in it, there is wonder in it, to find out about the beautiful kaleidoscope that you are. And while doing that, you shed the layers, the debris, if you want, of years and years of false beliefs, of punishment, of shame, of resentment, of bitterness, of everything that has made you you, and discover the light that lies underneath it all. And from there, start building yourself up again and take everything like the sword of Godric Gryffindor, absorbing only the things that make you stronger, only the things that enhance your light, only the things that you feel like are in alignment with your purpose, to be of service to yourself and others in love. In other words, the more you get to know yourself through the relationships in your life, the clearer you see your true identity, the more trauma is integrated and healed, and the more you'll find relationships to change as well, which is scary. Some step out of your life to make space for others to come into your life. Also, it is not linear. It is a process that requires you to be gentle and kind to yourself, with the ugly, with the dark, with the intensity of it all, with everything that may surface, even if it's not beautiful. Remember the importance of emotions. And lastly, acknowledge the emotions, feel them, and once you're ready, release them. I know that this takes a lot of self-responsibility. And in our system, we've not actually been raised to embrace self-responsibility. We are raised to give our powers away and to feel like life happens to us and not for us. And with this episode that is very dear to my heart, I wanted to emphasize the fact that it all starts and ends with you and your choices. And I know it is hard, and it requires a lot of patience, a lot of self-love, a lot of observation, and a lot of consistency. But it is worth it. It is worth it because you are the light, and your light is needed. Your spark is needed. People out there need to see you. And it is time to take back the responsibility and shape your perception on life into one of limitless possibilities. I don't need to tell you that, but you have everything you need already within you. You're beautiful. You're wonderful. You're sparkling. You're so needed. And I thank you with all my heart that you decided to take time and energy today to listen to this episode. I hope the exercise and the notes on the worksheet help you, assist you, support you on your journey. I salute you, and I send you from my heart to yours all the love in the world. My beautiful, beloved, fellow healing integrating onions.